Hey, what's up everyone? Like I promised, today we're doing brakes, and again this is on a 2009 ZX6R, but the process is pretty similar on all bikes. These are all the torque specs you're going to need to complete this job. Start by removing the rear caliper from its bracket with a 6mm Allen wrench. To remove the clip, turn the retaining bolt until the clip is in this position. With needle nose pliers, remove the clip. At this point, the retaining bolt should slide out with little effort since it's not actually bolted to anything. You should be able to seat this part by hand so you can remove the brake pads.
I really need to get a tripod, that way I can do this stuff and show you guys in a video what I'm doing. Basically here what I'm doing is using this clamp so I can drive the caliper piston all the way down to where it's seated flush, and I use it this way to ensure that I do so uniformly. So again, sorry about the terrible angles here. I do it so that I can do it uniformly, and that way that piston doesn't get cocked and something gets messed up. So just do it, crank it down, make sure it's flush.
So I didn't actually need to make the piston flush with the caliper, but that might change for your bike. Alright, so now you just gotta follow these steps in reverse order to assemble everything, and remember to torque everything down to spec. Oh, I almost forgot to say that you may or may not need to bleed your brake system, but at the bare minimum you should pump your brakes to make sure that you're touching that rear rotor. Alright, so for the front brakes, you're going to start off by removing your brake lines. I would drain them. I didn't drain them this time because I'm an idiot, and fluid went pretty much everywhere. But drain your lines first and then start removing the lines. So for my OEM lines, it has like a distribution valve, if you will, and that's kind of what attaches to the frame. But with the aftermarket ones, it's two separate lines, and instead of a block like that, it just has a little clip, and you got to bolt that back into the same area to prevent any binding. Moving down to the calipers, you're just going to remove both the banjo bolts, and once you've done that, you're going to be able to remove those lines completely and start the installation process of the other ones. Alright, so thanks to Todd Isaacson and Matthew Wiggins, I actually won a set of racing brake lines from Galfer, and that's what I'm installing now. So a lot of the things you're going to see here are going to be a lot different than your normal brake lines. This part here is the one that's going to replace your banjo bolt, and this side is what threads into the caliper itself. On this side, the mating surface is what actually seals off the brake line, so you're not going to need a washer. Even though you see me installing one for a little bit, I realize you don't need it. This is just what it should look like when you install it. Again, don't mind that top washer because you don't need it. The brake lines are designed not to need one. And remember, just torque it down to the specs that you see for the banjo bolt. Torque everything down to that spec so that you're not cross-threading or ripping out threads.
And if you're only removing the brake pads, you take these out, and then you can pull the brake pads through the back and then reinsert that way.
So if you're only doing brake pads and brake lines, you're pretty much done here. You can just torque everything back down to specs, and remember to bleed out your system.
But you know, we don't always do stuff by the manual, so whoever had this before and did the brakes decided that they were gonna give it some extra love. Ah, shit. See, I use this as leverage. I learned that from somebody on YouTube, actually. I was watching something else and I saw him do this, and it works pretty well, so I'm gonna keep doing it. I'll see if I can find his video again, give him some credit for it.
Alright, so I was able to get this done without having to take this out, but it was extremely difficult to do because there's very little clearance to get all the
spacers you need to get in here, spacers you need to get in there, with the caliper still in there. So what I did was, I basically did kind of like what you would do if you're only going to remove the brake pads. So what I did is I took them out, I pushed the pistons back into their bore, and once I pushed them back in, I had a little bit more playroom, a little bit more wiggle room to be able to get the tire in there with the rotor, and to be able to put the spacers on and whatnot. It took me about 2 hours or so, but that's because I'm doing it on my own. And this is what I'm using as a front stand instead of a real front stand. I'm sure it would have been much easier with a real front stand. Stuff's not wiggling around on you or whatnot. But that's how I got around it, because I wasn't able to break that one loose. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put everything back together, bleed the brake system, and then what I'll be doing after that is taking it to a shop and getting this removed. I know that I could probably do it at home, but unfortunately that's not something I'm able to do, and I don't want to mess up the caliper.